There is a particular kind of silence that arrives at 3 a.m. Not the peaceful kind, not the restful kind. The kind that presses against your chest like something heavy has taken up residence there without permission. You're lying still, but your mind is anything but. It moves fast, backward through every mistake you've made, forward through every disaster that hasn't happened yet, looping through conversations you should have handled differently, decisions that can't be undone, futures that feel increasingly out of reach. You tell yourself to sleep. Sleep doesn't come. You tell yourself to stop thinking. The thoughts only grow louder. Most people believe this is a modern affliction, a product of stress, screens, and the relentless pace of contemporary life. But this feeling, this specific weight of a sleepless mind turning against itself, is not new. It is ancient, and it was known intimately by one of the most powerful men who ever lived. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he was emperor of Rome. We tend to imagine emperors and kings as men untouched by ordinary suffering. We picture them insulated from the anxieties that plague the rest of us, protected by power, surrounded by certainty, sleeping soundly while the world bends to their will. Marcus Aurelius was nothing like that image. He ruled Rome for nearly 2 decades, and almost none of those years were peaceful. A devastating plague swept through the empire and killed millions, including soldiers, senators, and people he loved. Wars erupted along multiple frontiers simultaneously. Generals he trusted betrayed him. His co-emperor made reckless decisions that Marcus was left to repair. He lost several of his children. His own body was slowly failing him, and through all of it, he was expected to lead with clarity, fairness, and an unshakable composure that the empire depended on. What historians find remarkable is not that he survived all of this, it's that he seemed to grow wiser under the weight of it, more grounded, not less, more measured, not more erratic. And the reason we know this, the reason we can peer inside the private struggles of a man dead for nearly 2,000 years, is because of a journal he kept for himself. A collection of personal notes, reminders, and philosophical reflections that he never intended for anyone else to read. We call it the Meditations, and it remains the most honest document of inner struggle ever left behind by someone in power. It is not the polished memoir of a triumphant emperor. It is the raw working notes of a man fighting every single day to be better than his worst impulses. The Meditations are proof that Marcus felt everything: the grief, the exhaustion, the doubt. What set him apart was not the absence of those feelings. It was the philosophy he used to meet them.
And that philosophy had a structure. Marcus did not improvise his way through crisis. He'd been trained in Stoicism from a young age, and he returned to its principles the way a craftsman returns to his tools. Not as decoration, but as instruments for doing real work. Stoicism taught him one foundational truth that he never allowed himself to forget. Suffering does not come from events. It comes from the judgments we place on top of events. The story we tell about what is happening is almost always more painful than what is actually happening. From this foundation, he practiced 3 disciplines that formed the architecture of his inner life. The discipline of perception, how you see what is in front of you. The discipline of action, what you choose to do within your circumstances. And the discipline of will, how you hold yourself when neither perception nor action is enough. These were not abstract concepts to Marcus. They were the exact mental moves he made when the walls were closing in. And what is remarkable is that every one of them is available to you, right now, tonight, before the sun comes up. The first move Marcus made in his darkest hours was this: he refused to let the mind exaggerate what was real. There is something that happens in the late hours when we are tired and afraid. A setback becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes a permanent truth about who we are. A difficult week becomes evidence of a ruined life. By the time 3 a.m. is finished with you, a single failure has been transformed into a prophecy. The mind writes the eulogy for your future before the body is even cold. Marcus trained himself to resist this. He practiced what he called the discipline of perception, stripping events of the drama the mind layers onto them, not denying that something was difficult, not pretending the pain wasn't real, but looking at the thing itself, plainly and clearly, without inflation. He would ask himself a simple question: what is actually true right now, in this moment? Not what it feels like, not what it might mean, what is actually, specifically true. If you lost a client, that is true. That your career is over is a story. If a relationship ended, that is true. That you will never recover is a story. The Stoics understood that we suffer twice, once from the reality of what happens and once from the fiction we build around it. Marcus refused the fiction. He called the thing what it was and nothing more. That act alone, that refusal to catastrophize, is a form of inner discipline that most people never practice.
But there was something deeper he understood about the darkness. He didn't only try to see it clearly, he wrote it down. Most people at 3 a.m. do the opposite. They reach for their phone, they scroll, they try to drown the thoughts in noise or distraction, hoping the discomfort will dissolve before morning. It rarely does. It simply goes underground, waiting, because the anxiety you avoid at midnight comes back stronger at the next available moment of stillness. Marcus moved toward his thoughts, not away from them. He wrote in his journal with a kind of blunt honesty that could be startling. He didn't comfort himself with flattery, he interrogated himself. He put his fears into sentences, and in doing so, he did something powerful. Vague dread is almost impossible to reason with. It has no edges, no shape, no specific claim that can be tested. But a sentence can be examined. A specific fear, written plainly on a page, can be measured against reality, can be found wanting, can be reduced. There is a reason the meditations have survived nearly 2,000 years. They are not eloquent philosophy written for an audience. They are a man, alone in the dark, riding his way toward clarity. If you have ever felt that formless weight pressing on your chest and had no words for it, write one sentence, not a paragraph, one sentence that names exactly what you are afraid of. You will often discover that the fear, named precisely, is smaller than its shadow. Yet even with clear perception and honest reflection, there remained a category of suffering that neither tool could fully resolve, and Marcus knew it. There were things beyond his influence, the opinions of people who had already decided how they felt about him, the outcome of battles he had not yet fought, the health of a child slipping away despite every resource Rome could offer. And in those moments, he returned to a discipline he had learned from a former slave named Epictetus, who had suffered far more than any emperor and understood something about power that most powerful men never grasp. Epictetus taught that there are exactly two categories of things in life: what is within your control and what is not. Your judgments, your intentions, your effort, your character. These are yours. Everything else, the reactions of others, the outcomes of your choices, the movement of the world, these are not yours. And the mistake that exhausts us, that keeps us awake and hollow-eyed in the small hours of the night, is spending real emotional energy on things that were never in our domain to begin with. Marcus wrote this reminder to himself repeatedly, not because it came easily, but because it didn't. It is genuinely difficult to stop caring about what you cannot control. The mind treats it as surrender, but Marcus understood it as precision. Grief and effort belong where they can actually do something. Poured into the uncontrollable, they are simply wasted, burned away in the dark with nothing to show for it. Releasing what is not yours is not giving up, it is reclaiming yourself. And once you have released what was never yours, there is only one place left to stand: the present moment.
3 a.m. thinking is almost never about now. It is about yesterday, the words you said, the choices you made, the version of yourself you wish you could revise. Or it is about tomorrow, the conversation you're dreading, the outcome you can't guarantee, the future your anxiety has already decided will go wrong. The present, with its simple and unglamorous reality, is almost entirely ignored. Marcus wrote in the Meditations, "Confine yourself to the present," not as a retreat from responsibility, but as a return to the only place where anything real can actually be done. He trained himself to ask, in moments of overwhelm, what is required of me in this hour? Not the year, not the reign, this hour. And the answer was almost always something manageable. Breathe, rest, prepare for tomorrow's single task. The present is never as catastrophic as the mind insists it is. You cannot repair last year tonight. You cannot prevent next month's problems at 3 a.m., but you can put down what you are carrying. You can decide that this moment, this breath, this small act of choosing to rest is enough. The present is not a consolation prize. For the Stoics, it was the only place where power actually lived. But perhaps the deepest thing Marcus understood about his darkest hours was this. They were not interruptions to his life. They were part of it, and they had something to teach him. The Stoics called this Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not the passive tolerance of suffering, not grim endurance, but the active recognition that difficulty reveals what comfort conceals. Marcus believed that adversity was where character was not built, but proven. Every hard night showed him where his philosophy was still theoretical, where he believed it in sunlight, but hadn't yet lived it in the dark. The breakdowns were diagnostic. They showed him where work remained. Most of us treat suffering as a malfunction, something to be fixed, removed, or at least survived as quickly as possible so we can return to normal life. But Marcus knew there was no such separation. The difficulty was the life, and the question was not, why is this happening to me? That question leads nowhere. The question was, what is this showing me? And that question leads somewhere worth going. Every morning, after every difficult night, Marcus Aurelius rose. Not refreshed, not restored, often tired, grieving, carrying the same burdens into a new day that he had carried into the previous one. But he rose. Because the practice had not given him answers, it had given him a process. Strip the drama, name the fear, release what isn't yours, return to now. Ask what the darkness is teaching. These were not solutions, they were orientations, ways of standing inside difficulty that made the difficulty bearable, and sometimes, eventually, instructive. The Stoic path is not about feeling nothing. You will notice, reading the Meditations, that Marcus felt a great deal. Grief, frustration, loneliness, self-doubt. He was not a man without feeling. He was a man who refused to be ruled by feeling. That is the distinction. Emotional mastery is not emotional absence. It is the slow, imperfect, daily practice of responding differently to what arises, not because you have eliminated the storm, but because you have learned how to stand inside it. Here is what I want to leave with you. Marcus never claimed to have solved suffering. The Meditations are the proof. He had to remind himself of these same principles over and over, year after year. The lesson did not stick permanently. It had to be practiced daily, sometimes hourly. And that is not a sign of failure. That is what the practice actually looks like. It is never finished, and that is precisely its value. The next time 3 a.m. finds you, and it will, you will have a choice. You can catastrophize, or you can perceive clearly. You can run from the darkness, or you can right into it. You can carry what was never yours, or you can put it down. You can spiral into yesterday and tomorrow, or you can return to now. You can ask why this is happening, or you can ask what it is showing you. Those are not small choices. They are the same choices Marcus Aurelius made in his tent on the Danube frontier, in the palaces of Rome, in the sleepless hours of a reign that asked everything of him. He was not a god. He was a man with a philosophy and the discipline to return to it. That is available to you too. If this kind of wisdom speaks to something in you, share it with someone who might need it tonight. And if you want to go deeper into the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, there is more waiting for you on this channel. The practice continues. It always does.